What would you do if the person you love most was chained and left to die in a dark, merciless forest? Linda, pregnant and helpless, is trapped by her cruel ex-husband, entangled in a deadly mafia scheme targeting Quang, the man who loves her deeply. As Quang and his mother desperately search the forest, a darker conspiracy lurks in the shadows, waiting to strike. Will love conquer this nightmare, or will it end in tragedy? Subscribe now to follow this intense story of betrayal, love, and survival. You won't want to miss what happens next. The forest was a labyrinth of shadows and twisted branches, where sunlight barely kissed the damp earth. In the midst of this suffocating wilderness, Linda lay collapsed, her body bruised and exhausted, her ankles shackled to the base of a rotting tree. The iron chain bit mercilessly into her swollen skin, cold and unyielding like the heart of the man who had put it there, her ex-husband. Every time she stirred, the chain clanked with a cruel mockery of her suffering, reminding her that escape was a distant dream. The cries of distant animals and the eerie hum of insects filled the air, yet none of them drowned out the pounding fear in her chest. Her hands trembled as she caressed her belly, swollen with life, fragile yet resilient. She whispered soft reassurances to the child within her, though her own heart was heavy with despair. How could she protect her baby when she couldn't even save herself? She had thought her past was buried, that the nightmare of her ex-husband's cruelty was behind her. But he had returned, darker and more desperate than ever before. This wasn't just about jealousy or revenge, it was a sinister transaction. Her ex-husband had fallen deep into the clutches of the mafia, a debt that no amount of pleading could erase. The mafia wanted money, and Linda was his last bargaining chip. He knew she was carrying Quang's child, the child of a powerful CEO whose wealth and influence stretched beyond borders. To the mafia, Linda was no longer just a woman, she was a lucrative opportunity. A pawn to lure Quang into a deadly game. When he dragged her to this forsaken place, his eyes were hollow, consumed by a madness born of desperation. "Don't blame me, Linda," he sneered, his voice coarse and ragged. "Blame that rich bastard of yours. He took you away from me, now he'll have to pay to get you back." He spat on the ground, pacing like a predator circling its prey. "If he loves you so much, let him bleed for you. If not, well, the forest is hungry." Linda had begged, pleaded, screamed until her throat burned, but her cries only echoed into the void, unheard by anyone who could help. She understood then that this was more than just personal vengeance, it was a calculated move in a brutal game where her life, and her babies, were expendable. Her ex-husband had left her there, promising to return when the time was right, when Quang was desperate enough to pay, or when the mafia decided her life was no longer useful. The thought sent a shiver through her bones. She wasn't just fighting for her own survival, she was fighting for her child, the innocent life that hadn't even opened its eyes to the world. As darkness crept in, Linda tried to stay awake, fearful that sleep might mean never waking up. Her mind drifted to Quang, his gentle smile, his unwavering love, and the way his hand had tenderly rested on her belly when he first felt their child kick. She clung to those memories like a lifeline, a thread of hope that refused to snap. Somewhere out there, she prayed, Quang was looking for her. Somewhere, someone still cared. But the forest was deep, and the shadows seemed endless. Linda knew that unless a miracle happened soon, the chain around her ankle would not just tether her to the tree, it would tether her to death itself. Miles away, on the edge of that same unforgiving forest, Quang stood with his fists clenched, his eyes scanning the horizon with desperate intensity. Every snapped twig, every rustle of leaves stirred his hope, only to crush it moments later. Days had passed since Linda vanished, and each hour felt like a lifetime stretched by agony and fear. His mother, though older and weary, refused to stay behind. She stood beside him, her eyes red from sleepless nights, her heart pounding with the same relentless worry that consumed her son. "Don't lose faith, Quang," she whispered, gripping his arm tightly. "She's still out there. I can feel it." But Quang's heart was heavy. He had pulled every string, paid every informant, and yet Linda remained a shadow swallowed by the wilderness. He couldn't shake the thought that something far darker than a mere act of jealousy was at play. The pieces didn't fit. Linda's ex-husband was a coward, a violent man, yes, but not someone capable of orchestrating a disappearance so methodical, so calculated. It was too precise, too silent. Then a phone call came, a voice low and masked, dripping with menace. The caller didn't name themselves, but their demands were clear: money, and lots of it. "If you want your precious Linda back, pay up. Otherwise, find her bones." The threat was delivered with such chilling ease that Quang's blood turned to ice. But it wasn't the money that terrified him, it was the implication that even if he paid, Linda might still never return. His mother, sitting beside the small campfire they'd set up, pieced it together in her mind. She recalled whispers from contacts in the city, rumors of a mafia faction moving through the region, notorious for using debtors to ensnare high-profile targets. Her voice shook as she shared this with Quang. "They're using him, Quang. Her ex-husband, he's just the bait. There's someone bigger, more dangerous pulling the strings." Quang's mind raced. Of course. It all made sense: the abduction, the delay, the taunting phone call. The mafia was playing a longer game. They weren't after Linda alone, they wanted to bleed him dry, to break him mentally and financially. Worse yet, he knew that if he followed their instructions blindly, Linda and the child she carried would be silenced permanently to erase any evidence. He stood abruptly, the firelight casting sharp angles on his strained face. "We don't have time to wait," he muttered. "We have to go in. We have to find her before they decide she's no longer useful." His mother grabbed his hand, her voice cracking with both fear and strength. "If you go rushing in alone, they'll kill you too." Quang nodded, understanding the risk but unwilling to back down. The thought of Linda chained in some dark corner of the forest, scared and suffering, was a torment he couldn't endure. She had always been his light, his peace in a ruthless world of power and ambition. He couldn't lose her, not like this. The night deepened, stars obscured by thick clouds as if the sky itself mourned with them. Somewhere in that vast expanse of trees, Linda was alive, but for how much longer? Quang made a silent vow to himself, no matter what it cost, no matter who stood in his way, he would find her. What neither he nor his mother knew yet, however, was that beyond the mafia, a far more personal enemy watched from the shadows, someone from Quang's own past, someone with a vendetta darker than anyone could imagine. The night was closing in fast, shadows stretching like claws across the forest floor. Linda's body was weak, her limbs numb from the cold and the iron chain that cut deeper into her flesh with every slight movement. She could barely keep her eyes open, but the thought of her unborn child stirred her back to consciousness each time she began to drift. She couldn't let herself die here, not yet, not like this. Then, somewhere in the dense thicket, a sound. Soft at first, a crunch of leaves, the snap of a branch underfoot. Her heart leapt, her breathing quickened. She strained her ears, holding her breath, praying it was Quang. Maybe he had found her. Maybe her nightmare was finally ending. But as the footsteps drew nearer, steady and unhurried, dread settled in her bones. These steps were deliberate, too measured to be a frantic lover searching for his missing wife. Panic welled up in her throat. She tried to call out, but her voice was nothing more than a hoarse whisper. She clawed at the chain, her nails bloody and broken, but the metal held firm. The footsteps stopped just beyond her sight, hidden behind a curtain of branches. Silence fell, heavy and expectant. A low voice, rough and mocking, cut through the air. Still alive, I see. That's good. Our benefactor would be disappointed otherwise. Linda's stomach churned. She recognized the voice. It was one of the mafia's men, a brute who had been present when her ex-husband had first dragged her here. She knew now that this wasn't just about ransom. She was a message, a pawn in a far greater game she didn't understand. The man stepped forward, the glint of a knife catching the faint moonlight. You'll be happy to know your lover's getting closer. But don't get too excited. They want him desperate, broken. The more he struggles, the sweeter the kill. He crouched beside her, eyes glinting with sadistic pleasure. Your bait, sweetheart. And soon, when he shows up, we'll gut him right in front of you. Tears blurred Linda's vision, but she clenched her jaw. She refused to give them the satisfaction of her fear. Somewhere, she believed, Quang was fighting his way to her. She just had to survive a little longer. Meanwhile, not far from that clearing, Quang moved through the darkness, guided by a tattered scrap of fabric his mother had found snagged on a branch, Linda's scarf. His heart pounded, every muscle coiled with tension. He wasn't alone. He had brought a small team of loyal men, discreet and skilled, prepared to face whatever awaited them. But even as Quang advanced, something felt wrong. His instincts screamed that this was a trap, too easy a trail to follow. He pressed on, driven by the image of Linda chained and suffering, but the weight of unseen eyes on his back never left him. From the shadows, a figure watched, someone neither Quang nor Linda expected. A man dressed not like the mafia thugs, but in tailored black, his gaze cold and calculating. This was the true orchestrator, the one who had hired the mafia, the one with a personal vendetta against Quang. "It's almost time," the man murmured to himself, a cruel smile curling his lips. "Let's see how much pain you can endure, Quang, before I take everything from you." Linda, still chained, still bleeding, felt the air grow heavier. She didn't know why, but something told her that the real nightmare hadn't even begun yet.